into the future. And there's our options that we're continuing to evaluate. So this gives you an idea of the two different options we're looking at and as far as what they look like just in comparison. I'm sorry, this gives you an idea of the present compared to what the two options would look like. The key thing is that we're almost doubling the pavement surface is what we're proposing to do. And this would be an either option. Again, the most significant improvement really that we're going to see from day one, we intend to open this project in 2021 to have the construction largely complete and the lanes open. That doubling of pavement and those wider shoulders are going to make crashes and incidents significantly less costly in terms of your time and your delay. And the safety of emergency responders, along with you, the motorist. So those widened shoulders are really the key aspect of the project, especially in the near term. Okay, this gives you a little bit closer look, and again, this really hones in on the express lane option. The key points here, at no point will this be a fully tolled facility. There's always the two lanes there that are operating, functioning just like they are today. They would be free to use. The express lane option would have a separated, just painted separation, but it would manage who can use that lane. Now we can manage that in a number of ways. Obviously tolling the lane is the practice, is a practice and a portion of managing that lane. But HOV 3+ is also highly likely in this corridor. So in other words, anybody with 3+ passengers, if we can get people commuting to Denver, a carpool, things like that, that would be, that should be allowed. We have to leave the options open to manage. I can't tell you that there's a final decision made, but most of our other corridors do allow HOV 3+ US 36, and this corridor is unlikely to be any different than that. So motorcycles as well. These lanes are typically managed. In the other lanes around Denver, and I'll show you a map where those are, we do not restrict commercial trucks entirely from them, but they have a per axle fee that means we're seeing just really single digits at the most using those a day. So again, this is a lane primarily for cars, hopefully for HOV 3+, commuters, who can carpool and stuff like that and use the lane. Another aspect of the express lane that adds to its reliability is that you limit when you can get in and when you can get out of it. Again, this is not decided at this point because we're still in the study process and we're coming to meetings like this and listening, but a likely option would be that this express lane would start just north of County Line Road, that would, and then it would probably have one entry and exit point in Larkspur, and then the last one would be in Castle Rock. So it's going to capture that through traffic, that express traffic, really trying to make the trip between Denver, which is a very, very large portion of the traffic we see. So again, with either option, obviously, it's a useful tool for improving traffic. But that express lane managing when you get in and out helps to separate traffic. And we've all been on the corridor, all been driving here when we cut off by somebody. So that limiting of entry and exit, getting people in the lane where everybody's traveling in the same final destination really does help improve traffic and improve the flow of traffic. So this is one other rendering just to give you a quick idea of, and maybe a little better visualization of what it would look like when completed. Okay, this slide is really, it's meant to give you an example of where we did not put an express lane. So the T-Rex project in downtown Denver, widened just about 10 years ago, and we have no method to help people have a reliable option in this corridor. There is an option in the corridor, it's train service, right? But if you're in your car, if you're going to a destination that you need your car still when you're there, you're just nothing but stuck in traffic. It doesn't matter how important your trip is. Doesn't matter if you're, going to a job interview, or you're going to be late for work, or you're going to miss your flight. You've got no options in this corridor. Again, that's what we feel a general purpose lane could end up like this, and really will end up like this in just about the exact same time frame as an express lane, while the express lane still allows us to manage and give opportunities, for a reliable trip when you need it. So here's where express lanes are being used in Colorado. US 36 between Boulder and Denver. And it's a similar to this corridor because a lot of it is 2 lanes with 1 express lane, similar to what would be proposed in this corridor. So I-25 Central, basically center I-25 north, with projects continuing to extend that all the way to E-470 on the north side of Denver, and even projects in the works also to carry that to Fort Collins. C-470 in Douglas County on the south side of Denver is having express lanes installed right now. That project is, I can't say near it, but it's under construction right now and working to complete that work. And the I-70 Central project, if you all have heard of that one, I-70 is just about to begin construction from the intersection there with I-25 east to I-225, around the area where Pena Boulevard is to Denver International Airport. That's under construction. We'll also have express lanes. And then I-70, the mountain corridor, that's slightly different than what we're proposing here. That's a peak period shoulder lane. It's an express lane, but it's on the shoulder, and it's only opened up about 100 days a year. But that's another example of an express type managed operation. One thing I want to point out is not on this list is E-470. So E-470 is not run by CDOT, and it is also a fully tolled facility. That's not what we're proposing here. Again, there'll always be 2 lanes, 2 completely free general purpose lanes. Just with the proposal for an express lane, it would have that express lane managed. Okay, this is a picture of US 36 in an area, again, that's similar in the roadway section. Now that's an on-ramp coming on, so that's what that 4th lane is. It's not a full used lane. This stretch of US 36 actually has a volume. I looked it up in our system. It's about 20% higher volume than we have on I-25 right now in the gap corridor. So this is a stretch operating, again, about 20% higher volume. And what we're seeing is effective operation of the corridor. Now, that's definitely a heavy traffic situation, but what you don't see there is brake lights. There's enough gap in those vehicles. Those vehicles are traveling, if not at the speed limit, at a nice, reliable pace. And the express lane, gives, again, an even increased reliability and choice for those who want to use it. It's also worth pointing out that slide, gives you an example of some of the rates. That's 35 cents and 70 cents. Now, those are smaller stretches, smaller distances you'd be traveling up there. And I cannot sit here and make any promises about what the toll rates will be. But I can tell you that all of the study information that we have so far really has the rates, even at the peak times of no more than $6, and getting to $3 and below $3 are the likely toll rates we would see. And again, I just want to state that we would also use other managed techniques, HOV plus, things like that. Our real goal is to have that lane help us manage the demand on the facility and manage the traffic and really provide a benefit to those traveling in the free lanes as well. So this is a picture of the I-70, that peak period shoulder lane corridor also, where travel times increased, as much as 52% in some of those really horrible, post-ski weekend coming off the mountain. All right, real quick, what express lanes are not. Again, I've already said, We're not tolling the whole facility. We're not proposing to ever toll the whole facility. Nothing like that. It would be one managed lane. Our experience shows that most users of these lanes, you're either going to take advantage of the HOV 3+ type options, or you're going to use the lane when you have a real need. And just to emphasize, CDOT owns the road. This is not going to be some private company, trying to make a profit off the road. And that's an important point to also emphasize. CDOT is not, we have no expectation, all the analysis shows that we're not going to generate the type of revenue that's going to pay anything even remotely like a $350 million bill to build this project, through these tolls. That is not the purpose of the tolls. The purpose of the express lane, whether it be the tolls or the other options like HOV 3+, is to get the right 1 or 2 out of 10 vehicles into that lane, using it to really benefit everybody, to benefit all, to get that right number. So you, the driver, are going to really help establish the rate that we would have. So a little bit about the funding for the project. None of this funding is really guaranteed right this moment. We are trying to lean forward as much as we can to deliver a project as fast as we can. We at CDOT, we have all sorts of environmental rules with our federal funding and stuff like that. We're trying to streamline them as much as possible to get a project under construction that really went into the environmental assessment phase just in October, and we're trying to get it under construction on or before November of this year. So that is a difficult, challenging process to make that happen. A lot of people are saying that this might be the fastest major project that CDOT has ever completed to get that done. So right now, CDOT through SB 267, if anybody's aware of that, there's a law passed last year that allows us to get some funding through certain bonding sources. That is proposed to provide $250 million to the project. We've applied with El Paso County as the sponsor for an infra grant, a federal grant. Now that infra program coming out of the Trump administration is based on innovative things where the roadway itself can generate some of the revenue to help maintain it, to help, manage it. That is part of that, what makes that application more desirable to potentially get that funding. So that's a $65 million funding source. And then the local governments in the area, Douglas County, El Paso County, and Pikes Peak Regional Transportation Authority have committed the other $35 million, 25 here from El Paso County and Pikes Peak Regional Transportation. So it's worth pointing out, it is a team effort. I think there are definitely consensus to get something built in this corridor and get it built rapidly, but we certainly understand that there's wide-ranging opinions on what that should be. So the next step, I think I'm going to just skip through this slide real quick, because Tamara did talk about the environmental assessment process and what we're looking at in that. I do want to emphasize, though, again, really the most substantial thing to benefit the traveling public, if we can get this built rapidly, is getting that wide paved area with the shoulders, really crashes and incidences and what I call events, be they the Renaissance Festival or whatever, are a major portion of the delay we see on the corridor. And we think that that will really greatly improve it, just that aspect of the project. So a little bit about the timeline of the environmental assessment. Obviously, this is great. This is our most attended listening session so far. And you all are the type, if you're interested in coming to more of these public meetings, the environmental assessment public hearings will be in April. Actually, in late April is what we've tentatively got slotted, but April or May. We would have a decision document. What that means is we get the federal government, Federal Highway Administration, sign off and buy-in to the plan and be able to move into final design and construction. We hope to do that here in late spring. So I'll leave this up, so you have our website and our project email address. You know, we welcome comments. Again, we're in the study period, so now is the time for us to get comments and to see what the, you know, how they impact the project.
I first wanted to recognize any local officials or elected officials maybe here. We'd like to give you the opportunity to ask questions or say any, or sure, if you would like comments first. State Representative Shane Sandridge, are you here? I heard you represent back here. Oh, he's way back there. Would you like to come up here and ask a question or say something?
I didn't know anybody knew I was going to be here.
Well, I have
You
I have spies.
I don't know where you have spies.
I do.
Yeah, I'm State Representative Shane Sandridge, and I'm actually here to listen to see how they are communicating with you. And I know sometimes when politicians are here, it can be a little disruptive too. On my end, I don't want any tolls whatsoever. So, you know, we're on different sides on this thing, but I get to meet one person who wants it. So there's money out there. It needs to be reprioritized. So, you know, I work in, you know, I go to different committees I'm on the business committee, the finance committee, and then we have joint committees where we're working on the budget right now. There's money there. And we're working on trying to move it around. So, like I said, we have a lot of different areas here, but I don't want to whatsoever. So, we don't either. Huh? We don't either. Yeah. And so, I got elected for a purpose, and that's what I'm going to fight for. So let's go back to them.
I think we have Erica Chavez. She represents Congressman Kemba. Would you like to ask questions or say anything on his behalf?
Oh, nope, I'm just listening tonight, but thank you so much.
Okay. Any other elected officials?
What about candidates?
Excuse me?
Candidates at all?
Not yet, not
Not yet.
candidates. We'd like to give them that opportunity.
Well, actually, my name's Ann Howe. I'm running for County Commissioner in District 1 up here. And my group has been Fix I-25, which is trying to get I-25 widened for the last year without added taxes and without tolls. I have a petition back here if you're interested in signing it. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Okay, we'll take questions. If you can raise your hand, we'll take you one at a time, and we'll do our darndest to answer them. So the gentleman who had first name, the blue shirt in the back, could you tell us your name, where you're from? And
my name is Rich Schur. I'm the chairman of the board for the Tri-Lakes Chamber of Commerce and EDC. On behalf of our 450 plus business members, we are adamantly opposed to any tolling on a third lane. If we add a fourth lane, toll away. We're going to have more population down here in the next 20 years than any of us can imagine. And this is a vital corridor for commerce. We are opposed to a toll lane. Thank you.
I think I've got you next. And your name, please, where you're from.
My name is Nan Schroeder. I'm from east of here, off County Line. I got a simple question for the time being. Is there any way we can put signs up on the overpasses that tell people what the lanes are for? Every time I'm stuck in the gap, it's because someone is in the passing lane going 10 miles an hour below the speed limit.
So you're talking about
Our state is least takes care of that.
I think the best we can do is to take that comment. I don't think there's really the enforcement mechanism legally. But I think we can definitely take this.
There actually is a minimum. There's actually a minimum.
It's a law.
And we've requested multiple times to have new speed limit signs put up.
Minimum speed.
Correct. And I think we all can relate that if somebody pulled somebody over for that, it would make the problem worse. But using those cool signs that you guys put those little quippy things up that people slow down to read, reminding them that, hey, you know, left lane for pass, the speed limit is 75, I think would really go a long, long way. Reminding the guys that are towing the vehicles that they bought at auction at 5 o'clock south.
Mexico?
That,
In the middle of a snowstorm.
That's,
Yeah.
so you're talking about the overhead message signs.
yeah. The guys that are doing 45 towing 2 vehicles that they bought at the junkyard at 5 o'clock. Remind them that, hey, either you can maintain the speed limit or get off the highway.
Man, just as a caveat to that, is, so yeah, minimum speed limit for sure. And I think that's a comment we can take back.
Yeah, I think
I certainly-
We've been bringing it up for a year now, and nothing's been done.
there may be a difference between the signs that you see
I
and
do
the
want to point
signs.
out though that there's really very minimal enforcement out there because Colorado
Concur.
State Patrol will, because of the safety issues, and again, that's really one of the most significant aspects of the project, is to get those shoulders, they will allow more enforcement, they will allow more, right now, even with those signs, you're not gonna see enforcement because it's
I don't think we've asked for enforcement. We just want reminders. That's all we've asked for.
Thank you. Let's see. I think I saw you first. Your name, please, and where you're from.
You're talking about wider shoulders, and I've driven all over the country, and there's so much traffic here. This is the main thoroughfare between Mexico to Mexico north. This is the only main thoroughfare through Colorado, the state of Colorado. You really need 3 lanes, general purpose lanes. If you want to have an HOV lane, have it as a 4th lane and make it 2+, not 3+, and don't make it a pavement. So if you want an HOV lane, you have 3 full lanes in your HOV, because the population here is still growing. It's not done. You're, like you said, nobody's expanded this in 60 years. What's the population been in 60 years? And what's it gonna be for the next 40 years? You're not planning ahead, you're just trying to fill a gap that may last another 2 years. So are you thinking ahead of this? No. That's my problem.
Let me answer it as best I can, and we did look at that
Hey,
option.
can you repeat the question, because we cannot hear you back here?
Okay, I can talk really loud. Can you hear me now? All right. Okay, I'm gonna answer your question. I'm sorry. I don't want you to go deaf on the front row. The question was, why can't we add a 4th lane, making 3 general purpose lanes, and then maybe the 4th lane an express lane so we can better meet the future needs of the corridor? I do believe that is your question, and that is a good question. We did look at that alternative, and I would say that the primary reason why we're not evaluating that further is because of the cost. And so for us to be able to provide some relief on this corridor, which we will be ready for construction, there's some things that have to happen, but we have to complete the environmental assessment, we have to secure all funding. But we should be able to begin construction by the end of the year. For us to do that, we have the funding available to be able to do 3 lanes. If we are to wait to do it 4 lanes, it would be a long time before we would be able to get in there and improve the gap. Do you have anything else
It's
to
important
add?
to point out, we don't have the funding available right now. We are trying to plan as best we can, predicting funding that is likely but could change again with this legislative session. And so we're trying to plan what is realistic based on the funding that is feasible to come to this corridor. And
Didn't y'all spend $150 million on a building for CDOT?
Yeah.
Okay, so
$1 number.
I can help you with that question afterward. We want to focus on the gap here, and I think that's what we
Well,
want
that's
to
the
talk
money.
about.
That would make up all that lost
But
money.
let's bring it back to the gap. We just have too much interest in that. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Ruth Ann Spidell and lived here since 1992.
I can beat that.
And if anybody observes, and you don't like what I'm going to say, because you're busy protecting us from ourselves. And one of the things, if anybody drove down that road, when the traffic really got ugly was when you developed what I call the herding concept.
Oh, man,
And you put those little nice cables and pillars out so that we can have somebody weed eat around them. And you got them on both sides. At least in the old days when things got ugly, you didn't like us four-wheeling off the road to get to the side roads, But we solved our own problem. Now, my question would be that because there's certain stretches there that are very long, and I've even watched your emergency vehicles. Now that you got those wonderful little cables, they can't even get out of Castle Rock to get to the doggone accident. So if you're gonna do any of these lanes, you might wanna rethink your cables problem because you've hurted us up. And we could actually, even if you'd have what I call like the railroad system, where somebody could push a button and lift these puppies up so that we could get off, because you got certain areas from Toma Road to Greenland, you can't get off of the thing. And once you manage to take down any of the toilets, somebody like me now is getting really old, 4 hours on the interstate, I need to go to the bathroom. I understand, okay? Now, if you've got an environmental study, this is my suggestion. That doggone feeble mouse, get a male and a female, take it over to one of our zoos, and it's only 28-day gestation period. Get over the feeble mouse.
Ann's she's been raising her hand. Ann, your question?
So just to address the earlier question, you said it was funding. Funding's never been an issue per se. The reason why it's 3 lanes is because it's been accelerated, not because of funding. SB 01, which is proposed in this session, would double the funding of SB 267. So it's not a funding issue, it's because we tried to accelerate this, because we've only waited 60 years to get this road updated. So just so it's a point of clarification, it's not so much funding, it's because it was accelerated. Your own slide showed that 4 lanes would be the better solution, not 3.
Ann, thank you. You bring up a real good point about funding. For those of you who couldn't hear her, she said that there should be the funding to add a 4th lane. And so she's been at a few of our meetings and making that point very clearly. But since we are on the subject of funding, I just want to give you a little bit of clarification where we are. This, in a very basic way, tells you what our funding situation is for CDOT and our main revenue sources from the gas tax. And this gives you a picture between 2016 and 2040. So from 2016 to 2040, we expect to get about $21 billion worth in revenue. It's a lot of, that sounds like a lot of money to me. But we have identified needs of $46 billion. And this is just basic needs and capacity improvements. And so what that means is we have about a $1 billion annual shortfall. So we really have to prioritize and stretch our dollars. And to give you an idea of where the money goes, CDOT brings in a little over $1 billion a year, mainly from the gas tax. And most of it goes to maintaining what we have. Maintaining the 23,000 lane miles and well over 3,500 structures, among many other assets that we have to repave, we have to rebuild, just to keep up, and we're struggling to do that, as you know, as you're driving on our roads, just to keep up with the status quo. This is what we have left over in state funding. This is what we have left over in state funding for new capacity. This is new capacity for all projects across the state. It's very low. So when we are going for improvements such as I-25 gap, we have to depend on another additional source of funding. 267 is helping. We have to look for federal sources of funding, which that has been dwindling. And we have to rely more and more. Maybe this wasn't so much the case many years ago, but we have to rely more and more on local input as well too. And we have to do that with every project that we have. The same thing is going on with the I-25 express lane, the Grover contract to build express lanes I-25 in the northern part of I-25, well north of Denver. So that's just want to give you a reality check on the funding situation that we're having to live with and trying to make the absolute best use of our funding sources for all the needs there.
So it's just worth pointing out, I mean, I've lived in this area, like I said, and I've commuted this corridor 14 of the last 16 years to go to work. And I mean, I've also commuted many other areas. I mean, the north side of Castle Rock, Powers and Research, I-25 through Colorado Springs, you know, they're all priorities. They all need to be improved, and we don't have the funding in the long-range plan for, you know, most of those. So, you know, there's competing priorities for the funding.
I'm gonna see if there's, I know you asked a question, is there anyone, and I promise I'll come to you. Did anyone else want to ask a question before I get this gentleman again?
Get one back here.
And, okay.
Oh, I just made a comment.
Yeah, I just,
And she's,
So-
okay, your name, please?
my name is Samantha, and I live locally. I did vote to go ahead and support this project, not realizing that a toll was an option. Now, I understand that you all are in a very difficult situation. I understand that maintenance is very expensive down the road. But I do think that you should take into consideration that it seemed like a bait and switch for a lot of us. So when you talk about what we're going to have access to, we voted for 3 lanes of access. So maybe the 4th lane, being the express lane, to help pay for the maintenance makes a lot more sense than only giving us the 3 lanes of access and making everybody bitter in the process. And if it takes an extra year, well, we've had this problem for much longer than 10 years. We could wait an extra year to do it properly. I mean, I make my children think through things and think through all the steps and come up with the best plan. Sometimes it takes a little longer. Sometimes it takes a little more effort. Sometimes you have to dig for a little more finance. Maybe you have to wait to build the finance. But if we voted for 3 lanes that we can use, we should have 3 lanes that we can use. And I fully support a 4th express lane, and I think that's a good compromise. And I would just kind of throw that out there, that I love that you're working so hard, and I love that you're trying to prioritize this and do it quickly. But we might be missing a great opportunity to do it properly. Just throwing that out there.
So my name is Jackie. I live literally around the corner. And since I moved here in '92, I've been commuting to downtown Denver and the tech center on an ungodly regular basis. My question is, there's a number of bridges between here and Castle Rock. What changes does this project anticipate for those bridges in order to have enough room for the lanes? Any, some, none?
Most of those bridges will be widened with this project. Right now, the 2 overpasses at County Line and Palmer Divide and at Skyview, that Toma Road exit. Right now, we're concerned, we don't think we have budget to replace those structures, so that's over, those go over, right? But most of the other structures, Plum Creek included, the railroad bridge right now is probably one that we're going to leave in place. But most all of those structures get replaced. And while we're talking structures, though, I do want to point out too, right now we're proposing 3 wildlife crossings. Again, wildlife collisions and crashes are really a major cause of accidents, of a safety issue for the corridor. So we're proposing 3 wildlife crossings and potentially a 4th in the south of County Line Road if we can get it to work and get a design that'll work. Those, along with 20 miles of deer fence, we're really precluding animals from getting onto the highway. And so that's another important aspect of it. So that's also a significant portion of the price tag, right? I mean, replacing all these structures with widened structures is a significant cost.
Yes, sir, you raised your hand.
Yes, my name is Richard Robertson, and because he mentioned the structures and bridges, which are extremely important, I'm going to make the assumption, but you tell me, those are going to be, any that are going to be replaced that need to be widened for more lanes, you are going to ensure that they will at least be able to take 4 lanes in each direction. Am I correct?
On county roads?
Well, county, no, beyond County Line Road. I'm talking about I-25, and whether you put in 3 or 4, if you only go with a 3rd lane, I assume though you're going to have the right away underneath those bridges wide enough to take 4 lanes in each direction?
We're gonna, okay, yeah. The structures are gonna be wide enough, and we are planning on putting in 16-foot inside shoulders and 12-foot outside shoulders. That would accommodate relatively, and we're gonna pave out the shoulders, so we are trying to do the measures. One of our methods to speed up this project is to try to do everything within our existing property. Property acquisition process is a very time-consuming process for us. Highly increases our study, our environmental assessment period too, because there's so much wildlife conservation easements and things like that that, you know, are a little more difficult to touch than even private property in some cases. So yes, those bridges and structures are going to be built where they could handle. Now, it would be reduced shoulders in the future on those structures if we did it, but yes, you could widen the road and use those. They're going to be built out with the width sufficient to be able to allow that 4th lane to be optimally done in the future.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, in the back.
Right here, okay. Good evening, Mark Wester, and thanks for being here. I know these kind of meetings can be challenging sometimes when you're on that end of it.
I was itching for this, to tell you the truth.
Good,
This is my
good.
community, right? I'm not fibbing. I
Sure.
live here right across the highway over on Santa Fe Trails, and I'm dying to come here.
Great.
It's great. It's amazing.
I was too.
To have 4 times as many people as all the other ones, so this is great.
You know, and I commute into downtown Denver every day and every weekday. And I know that the express lanes are kind of in vogue across the United States, and you know, you pointed out that they're used in Colorado quite a bit. Can you talk a little more about why the department favors the express lane? And because to me it sounds like part-time capacity and full-time congestion.
Yes.
And without the woman's comment about having 4 lanes with a hove lane or express lane as a 4th one. So can you talk about what payoffs does the department see? I get the sense that there's some payoffs or some funding that you get to access with an express lane that a GP lane wouldn't provide.
Well,
Right.
I don't think, I'd have to talk to we have a high-performance transportation enterprise that really runs
Right.
the express lanes, so I'd have to discuss with them to see what, but the revenue that's being generated so far in corridors where they can project, where they can do a tolling analysis and say this is going to generate some sort of additional revenue beyond just the maintenance cost, which, you know, relatively minimal. Those types of corridors, C470 is one of them. We were able to bond to get additional funding, and then those bonds will be paid off over time through that express lane in part.
And a GP lane doesn't afford you that?
It certainly doesn't. This project, all the revenue studies, again, we're still studying it, right? The actual tolling and revenue study from our enterprise is not due until, I think, as late as April to really come in. But we got some preliminary numbers, for example, that say, you know, about 40% of this traffic could be HOV3+, so that's not paying in anyway.
Right.
So this corridor right now, based on the numbers we're seeing, it's not going to generate enough for us to bond or something like that. It really is a method of providing reliability. There's no other choices on this corridor. It's very difficult. Yeah, if you've driven this corridor, you might like a scenic drive every once in a while. I know I did. It feels cooler on County Road 105 in the summer to cut over there, but that's not really a viable option. As soon as you hit traffic, you're just stuck, unless you do have the extra half hour to go take a country road trip, which I've done a few days. But so having a reliable choice when you need it is an important aspect. The reliability is something that I think, not an economic perspective from CDOT, but an economic perspective from the user's point of view. You know, when it's valuable to you to pay $3, $6 to get to some place that you're gonna, like a flight, that you would lose hundreds if you don't get there on time. Having that choice is something that I think we really want to protect. US 36 is proving to be, to be very effective. And we feel it is proving to be effective in the managed lane and in providing reliability.
You've been very patient.
Thanks. My name is Bill Lewis. I live here in Monument. The question on the numbers, ultimately we all understand it's a life safety issue. I drove it for 2 years. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I did the Pentagon Drive for 5. I survived that. I quit my job in Denver and finally found something down here because I just couldn't risk my life anymore. I've had shoot to the shoulder nights, 4-hour commutes home. So that's why I'm passionate about this. It's absolutely ridiculous. But on the funding piece, that just seems to be the one. I agree that I think 3 lanes with a 4th lane being the toll lane or express lane is probably the best solution. I think everybody around here kind of supports that, and hopefully you're hearing that. But from a cost perspective, the widening of Woodman to Monument, okay, so that was, let me get my numbers here. That was 11 miles, it was $67 million. That was $6 million a mile. This one, according to the Denver Business, or the Colorado Springs Business Journal, they were quoting CDOT back in October of 2016 saying this project would be $270 million. Now we're up to $350 million. But if you do the math with the 18-mile stretch, we're looking at over $19 million a mile. So you're looking at a 200% increase in mile from 2 projects that are going to connect. Can we explain where the difference is and why we're having a 200% increase per mile?
I like that idea.
Yeah.
What is the magic behind these numbers?
The cost is really, there were no interchanges built in that project. We are replacing the Upper Lake Gulch interchange in particular.
Didn't you redo Briargate though, or Northgate?
Northgate.
Yeah.
Northgate
Interquest was redone?
Northgate had some improvements for the roundabouts. But the Northgate interchange was not, the bridges were not replaced.
I just don't think people are buying 200% increase.
It's the pavement quantity alone on this corridor, just the pure pavement quantity is about $50 to $60 million, just pure asphalt. That's really, I could show you the calculations on it. That's not, that's just an easy, relative easy math. That's just pure, that's no additional earthwork, no structures. There were no wildlife crossings built on. We have the safety issues, significant safety issues. We're going to have to put a significant amount of walls in the median that did not need to go in on the project in Colorado Springs. It's really, there's going to be a very significant amount of additional earthwork on this project that wasn't required on that project in Colorado Springs as well. This one has a lot more areas where we're going to have to build the good earthwork that won't, even where we can steepen it up and we'll put guardrail, which we don't want to do, we want to do minimally, because as it's been pointed out, right? When you put guardrail on the road, you just, now it's on both sides and everything. It's a significant, so even where we don't do that, we have erosion issues and stuff, so it's those things that are causing, the price.
I just think that's probably a good PR thing to maybe figure out how to answer this one because, a 200% increase is quite a bit.
I think you bring up a good point. Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think for me, once to really show the breakdown of the cost of these projects, bridges are incredibly expensive. Those structures are incredibly expensive. So to help explain to you why it is what it is, and I think that's a really good suggestion.
And then I'll be done. My final point is, this has been a project that's been ignored. You talked about priority corridors. This is one that's been neglected for 50, 60 years.
Yes.
The reality is it's time to bite the bullet and do what should have been done 20 years ago.
We're on a very accelerated schedule.
I hear you.
Very much so.
And hopefully you hear from those that are really, truly affected. And if you look at the story that KOAA ran yesterday and talked about the amount of people who are selling their properties in Highlands Ranch and moving down here because it's more affordable, it's only going to get worse. The story that ran in the Denver Post 6 months ago that talked about El Paso County exceeding Denver County by 2050. The reality is we're putting we're putting a Band-Aid on a large hole in it now.
We are looking at this as interim, if you will, because as I mentioned earlier, are you all, are any of you in here familiar with the PEL study? Have you gone to any of those meetings? Okay, so you are familiar with them. We will be having more of those. Well, to summarize, again, the PEL, we came at this, we didn't have any funding identified really at the time when we started this to improve the gap, but we had to do something. We had to, well, what can be done? And that's like doing, you know, some pretty in-depth traffic analysis of what the corridor looks like now, what it looked like 20 years from now, what can be done to improve it. So then once we did have funding identified and we started the environmental assessment, it really could kickstart this into high gear. But the PEL, it looks at corridor improvements, as I said earlier, from C470 to Monument. And that will, one of the alternatives that are being looked at is adding an additional lane throughout the corridor. So through those 32, 34 miles. So this is not the end of the story. We had to put that PEL on pause to really do something with the gap. We'll go back to that PEL, I think, over the summertime. I think we're going to go back to complete
What does
that.
that stand for?
Planning and environmental linkage.
It's a wonky thing, I'm sorry. It's I'm going to figure out what else to call it, but it's planning and environmental linkages study. It took me months to figure that one out, so don't feel bad. So, yes, ma'am.
So part of the funding that we're looking for this is 65 million from this infra grant, this federal grant. When will we know whether or not we got it, and what do we do if we don't?
April and May is what we're expecting. I mean, it's a federal Department of Transportation, so I can't control when they come out with the final decisions. But yeah, April or May is when we're expecting to hear about that infra grant. And I don't have the answers for you about what we're going to do. I'm trying to run the design on the project. I know that we at CDOT are committed to this project, and if we have it designed and ready to go, I mean, that is the type of project that remains attractive to try to find other sources of funding. You know, it was already mentioned that Senate Bill 1, so you know there are potentially options. I just wanted to say too, though, about that fourth lane. So one thing is, it is 3 lanes to the north and south of this. So really, you know, one way to look at it is that it is the next project to get this 4-lane, but also 4-lane connecting all the way up, right? If we're going to 4-lane it, we need to get the 4-lane Colorado Springs up. We need to carry that 4th lane through this 18-mile corridor, and we need to carry it through Castle Rock too. Just to have one section 4-lane is perhaps not the best use of money.
You gotta start somewhere. You gotta start somewhere.
Well,
We have a problem
yeah,
from
it's-
Denver to Castle Rock.
That's not logical.
So you're going to see first.
What is the incremental cost of the 4th lane over the 3 lane? I mean, you hadn't gone through that analysis.
Yeah, I've talked over with the
And there has to
crew
be
that
some
did the
sort of
study.
economy of scale, right?
Well, you know,
Or is it linear?
well, I could have a long discussion with you about the economy of scale. It is limited, actually. The bigger you get on a project, I mean, you can start to run into scarcity of resources and stuff like that does not lend to just prices continuing to go down. You know, you could actually escalate if you try to speed things up too much and you try to build too much all at one time. So that's not necessarily. The numbers that have been generated right now are about $100 to $150 million for that extra lane, the entire 18 miles. Again, that's because of increased structure widths and you know, in large measure, and a very significant amount of extra embankment property. Again, we're trying to keep, we think we have a footprint that keeps almost all of this project in right of way. That 4th lane, now you're going to have significant areas where you have to buy property or put really huge walls and things like that to avoid it. So those are a large part of the cost.
The gentleman in the back?
Yes, Milt Dahlberg, and I live on Greenland Road halfway between 83 and the interstate. And over the last couple of years, I've noticed that 83 has really gotten heavily with traffic. And so I noticed that there was a stoplight put at 105 and 83, which I assume was in anticipation of trying to get some anticipation of when there's construction here, a lot of the traffic's gonna go on 83. Are there any other plans at Greenland Road and 83 to put up these left-hand turn lanes in there? Because people are gonna take Greenland Road over to 83 like they do now when there's a backup, say in the Larkspur area. Is there any other improvements along 83 as part of this project in anticipation of the construction, traffic specifically?
Traffic signals are installed based on warrants. I mean, we don't put a traffic signal over there because, because we, now, the turn lanes are an important consideration.
Just a turn lane, just so you can get
That's
out of
something
the,
that I
out
think
of
we can take
traffic.
back and we can definitely communicate and see if, a safety project or something like that can possibly look into that. But one thing about, again, the large pavement area we're putting down, which, hey, that's a potential way we could save costs by reducing the pavement. But again, we feel those extra widths are critical to the safety, emergency response, dealing with crashes that are a major part of the delay. So that's part of the reason for the wide pavement section we're proposing. But along with that is also to be able to phase this project, to keep 2 lanes fully open, with the exception of, deep in, overnight kind of single lane closures. We are committed to phasing this project where we keep 2 fully operational lanes on the interstate, pretty much all.
But people are gonna go 83 to avoid construction.
There's no doubt about it.
I mean, for that, so a little bit of, temporary measures over there would definitely help.
We already do it. You're not driving on down 25.
How many people killed last year?
Yeah, is this the same briefing that we got at the PRTA CAC yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, so this starts out by saying it's been 60 years since this road's really been addressed.
Since widening.
Yeah, since widening. And if you pull up that slide that's got all of the columns on it for the levels of service that you get. That one. So at what point in the 2 plus the measured lane does it go red? At what year for the general purpose lanes?
2030 in both.
2030
2030 and 2032.
So approximately 9 years after it's done, it goes to level D for the general purpose lanes.
Yeah, level E, which is.
And the reality is it'll be 20 or 30 more years before this road is addressed again, because it'll drop to the bottom of the list. So it seems short-sighted to spend $350 million to buy 9 years of relatively okay travel. It's better than it is today, because you get a little bit of relief. But if you put 80% of the traffic on the 2 lanes and 20% on the others, you're not really solving the problem.
Lady Green.
Mine is also about 83 because I live at County Line and 83, and anytime there's an event on I-25, I cannot get off of County Line unless I want to go north. I cannot cross 83, I cannot turn left, I can turn right.
Here, here.
I'm really excited to see that we're fixing the gap. My daughter is 6th generation Colorado born. Been driving this road my entire life. And it's been needed to be done my entire life. But I'm also worried that my daughter will be hitting the road at about the time this starts to really take off, and 83 is where she needs to be. And it's a safety hazard. At least 7 people have died at that intersection in the time I have lived there in 15 years. And to add all of the traffic from I-25 when we expand it, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like.
Green, I think you're first.
All right. Chester Sawyer, I live in, right at I-25 and County Line. The situation I hear, and I've heard everywhere else is, nobody is for the express lane except y'all.
Yes.
Right. So why y'all work for us? We don't work for you. Listen to the people and do what we want, not what you want.
Yes.
He's been trying to
Oh,
talk.
I'm sorry. Oh, but you've been raising your hand and I'm so sorry. Okay.
John, I'm Larry Katz, I live here in Monument. John, could you talk a little bit about the traffic load that's between, say, Woodland and Monument Hill versus what's beyond it? We have a traffic load that goes from Woodland to Monument Hill that flows at 80 miles an hour very well, thank you. And the moment it hits Monument Hill, it goes to 2 lanes. What's the express lane going to add that we don't have already between here and Woodland Road? 3 lanes continuous on through should be able to carry that same level of traffic. That doesn't make a whole lot of intuitive sense to me to say that we need an express lane there, but we don't need it from here to the Springs. It's the same traffic load. Nobody gets off the road at Monument Hill. They keep going.
In part, in 2013, I mean, the CDOT Transportation Commission established a policy that we will, look heavily at express lanes on all capacity improvements on the interstate. That project was basically grandfathered in to not have to consider express lanes, or it would be highly likely. The thing is, on this order, there are operational benefits to express lanes. Like I mentioned, among the ingress, you get in, you stay in that lane, you're not weaving, trucks aren't cutting you off. If you have that HOV3, you have a reliable trip. So, I mean, those are the benefits that, and then when we do see congestion, if it is true, there's limited funds. We don't know when we're going to be back into this corridor. If we haven't built in managing, techniques, then we can't control it, just like we can't control T-Rex. We can't allow a reliable trip. And that's why the Transportation Commission established that policy, so we could, to push us to have that reliable option available.
So part of that is because if you don't build a toll lane, they can never put a toll lane on it. If it's built as a general purpose highway lane, they cannot go back and put a toll road on it. So they're pushing real hard to put a toll road on it now because bet you donuts to dollars it'll never go to general purpose lane. It will always be a toll lane. And that's by federal law.
That's federal law right now, so we couldn't, for example, just convert and say we're going to take the left lane and turn that into
I think the gentleman in the green shirt.
Hi, my name is Kurt Emmanuelson. Lived in Springs since '93 as well, and I just live east of town here now. Do I understand your reliable option that you keep saying is to completely stop congested lanes, but the option for someone to pay $15 to $20 because it's a license plate toll, because they probably don't have a transponder in their car, and you double the fee if they don't have a transponder, to get to the airport that one time, but you're conceding the free lanes of being completely blocked is okay as long as you have an option to go around it if you're willing to pay the money. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what we're saying. That what we have learned from other express lane facilities and what we're seeing with our data now is that should we use that new lane and express lane, travel would actually improve across all 3 lanes.
We've never seen it that happen. Your slide there of 36 had 20 cars in 2 lanes and 2 cars in 1 lane.
But those cars.
That's what I see on the road when I'm driving the roads and I go through these areas. North side of Denver, same thing. You got completely stopped free lanes and you got 3 cars going by you in the I can pay it lane. This is ridiculous.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do you have somebody from your office taking notes tonight?
I'm recording it.
Oh, you're recording?
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, this is a joke. Because we're all talking and there's nothing that we're saying is being, noted.
We have all the meetings, we have.
But here,
I have something on the phone.
You know, it seems that gentleman back there asked a question about the 9 years. You know, you've given pay 350 million for 9 years. And I assume you've got a priority. And I would hope this is number one.
It is a statewide.
Is it number one? So somewhere on the bottom of that list, is there a project that could maybe delay a year and you borrow money for that? And then in this case, you can get the extra 150 million, for example. Or is it really just a high priority on paper? Because I've lived here, well, my wife and I here have lived here since 1984. And it seems to me, this is just the impression I've had, I don't know how many other people have had that, but all the funding goes to Denver.
Right. Yeah. You got the money if you want it.
Like pulling teeth or something to get money for the springs, and that may be political. I don't know why it is, but that's the impression I've got. So can you answer both those questions?
It is a statewide priority, that's for sure.
Okay.
It definitely is a priority of the governor. It's just such a walk. And so there's definitely a great desire to get the project under construction by the end of this year, pending all sources of funding are secured. So it definitely is.
So can you borrow from Peter to pay?
Well, we'll have identified sources of funding. And sure, yes, of course, we bond projects and that kind of thing too. But that's what we have to work with at this point. We have things coming into place, the funding sources coming into place. And we want to be ready for construction once those funding sources have been secured, so we can get started with the project. Yes, sir.
Can you put up the slide that shows 90% of your money going toward maintenance and how it trees down into the little pittance that's left for new work? Yeah. When I look at that slide and when I hear what you said about that slide, it would appear to me that for a state that is growing and has in-migration and has tons of construction, the CDOT does not have the resources to match the growth of the state.
We don't.
What percentage of the state budget goes to CDOT?
We should know that.
Well, what I would like to know, you presented a lot of facts.
Yeah.
I would like to know if the public has been given or will be given the option of a very small increase to the state income tax or whatever to fund this thing. You are trying to take a very small pie and argue about how to cut it up. And globally, I wouldn't want to be in your game because I think you're in a very tough situation, funding-wise. I'm not talking about toll lanes or just HOV lanes. I could talk about that. I've lived most of my life in California. But really, I think you've got a global problem here, and I haven't heard you talk about it.
Well, I don't think you're going to hear us necessarily lobbying for, do a sales tax increase or something like that. But they are out there on the table, right? That's part of the last multiple legislative sessions have considered that. They have not ended up on the ballot. There's consideration of more this year, measures that would allow us to bond. And I mean,
bonding is borrowing. I'm not talking about bonding.
Yeah.
We're not going to lobby for that. We're talking about a project. So.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, that's up to the
tax revenue too, though. Sales tax increase was on the docket last year and it did not pass. I mean, I think
it might be time to talk about it again. The federal government is prioritizing infrastructure right now, and I don't see Colorado at least doing that in this area.
Yes, sir.
Donald Bryant. I live right at I-25 and county line for the last 20 years. And it seems to me that we're disregarding what the House of Representatives member Sandridge said, that there's plenty of money in the budget. And Representative Lundeen has also told me that, he's mentioned that in several meetings, that there is money in the budget to fund this project, to make this work. And it's not a funding issue. And it just seems to me, I want to reemphasize how short-sighted it seems. If you're going to widen all the bridges, why not make it 4 lanes? right away. And the other example that you keep giving is Boulder to Denver, the 36. That's like connecting two cities. Colorado Springs is the second largest city, Denver is the largest. I-25 keeps going. It just keeps going to New Mexico. 36 pretty much stops in Boulder, and then it's just connecting two cities. And there's still 20 cars to two. And if you do it in a major thoroughfare, 25 and 70 are like the two major highways in Colorado. Those are the ones that you need to be put the most funding in, put the most emphasis on. And it doesn't seem to me like our governor, you said that is his priority, but our Democratic governor is not in line with our Republican House of Representatives that are telling us the money's there, and he's saying it's a priority, but it doesn't seem to me like it really is. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, I really can't speak to those types of issues. Those are issues that are discussed within the legislature. We don't make laws. We are allocated monies, and we have a process that we have to follow to place those on projects. But those are good discussions. I'm trying to be fair here and see. And we get issues.
Shane and I can help answer those.
Excuse me. The state budget has allocated $0 since 2009 to roads. 0 from the state budget. This year, Governor Hickenlooper was prompted. He initially assigned 0 to transportation. He was prodded, and I believe it's $134 million he put into the budget this year towards transportation. There have been some bills put forward. Last year in last session, Senate Bill 267 put $1.9 billion towards roads. Now, it's bonded, so it'll take some time, but this is what CDOT asked for. That's what CDOT got. This year, Senate Bill 01 is looking to repeal that bill, but put twice the amount of funding towards transportation, and make it mandatory that it's spent on roads, not on gondolas, not on heated bike paths, roads and bridges. So they're working hard, the legislators are working hard, some of them, to get it funded. But right now, we're kind of in limbo.
Yeah, I'll add to that. If anybody tells you we don't have the money for it, that's not true. We're bringing in record revenues right now. The state is, the federal government's bringing in record revenues. I'm on the business committee, on the finance committee. It's shocking some of the things we throw money at. It's just unbelievable how there's wasteful money. We have money for this, okay? So, just to take some of the heat off them, they're given a certain amount, and they need to be given more.
Yeah.
Here's where I see some hope, and this is just from a Republican in a minority. At the very beginning, the governor didn't want to give any money. There's some research coming on that people are actually leaving the state, especially Denver. And one of the biggest reasons is due to infrastructure, due to the traffic. So now it's starting to hit the governor, and I know there's conversations between the Speaker of the House and the governor about this issue, because it's really starting to hit them now. When it's starting to hit them, that's where we're seeing a little bit of a change. So that's where I see a little hope. I see some different ideas about bond initiatives, but there's the Speaker's talking about it, and I'm getting a positive tone. It's changing, I'll tell you the truth, each week. So I'm cautiously optimistic that they will get the money that they need, but the political pressure is being felt. I haven't met, is there anybody here that would just rather have tolls?
No.
I get to meet one, okay? So we're there to represent, the governor's there to represent, the speaker's there, I'm there. And when you get such a consensus during a time where we're bringing in a lot of money, the government really needs to answer to the voters. So that's just my thought. That's just my thought. And that's what we're doing. And you brought up Lundeen, Representative Lundeen. Terry Carver is another one. So, it's all clear what the citizens want. Blatantly clear. Just so you know.
Sure, okay. There was an article in the Denver Post, I think it might have been in the Gazette, I'm not sure we get both papers, about how Colorado Springs was gonna be bigger and bigger.
It already is.
Anyway, so we should be looking at 4, not 3. I mean, they're already talking about this. I don't think we're getting that.
You don't have to.
Yes, ma'am.
My last name is Link, and I'm trying to make a link. This gentleman back here says there is money, and you're saying there isn't. I'm a victim of a car accident. I've been here since 1969, by the way. I hope I don't look that old. And I got caught underneath the bridge where it's the south gate of the Air Force Academy, and I was run off the road because at that time, you might not remember that, so maybe you weren't here, it was just a tiny little ramp there. And Seymour Cray, if you guys are big in that end of technology, got killed there. Well, they didn't fix it until after he got killed. Well, they should have done it when I got wounded.
How many more people have to die for that?
That's right. So I'm going to ask you again. What is the problem between CDOT and the legislature and these people back here? What's the linkage that we need to do?
Well, as I said, the legislature, they established the law.
So you're going to put it on the legislature, and they are going to put it onto you. So there's a big, the gap is not the road. The gap is not the road. The gap is CDOT and wherever the money is. There's your gap. Thank you. It was a pleasure to have you here.
You have wonderful slides, and I understand your position. You're only allowed so many dollars. The thing that I think is missing in your presentation is, what if when the semi flips over and all the lanes are still blocked, you still don't have us a way to get off of this puppy? What if we got the caravan of messed up cars that are going to Mexico and they cause a whole chain reaction accident?
One more person dies and you shut the road down.
What the alternative is to get us off of it, and it's not Toma Road, and it's not trying to get ourselves all the way to Castle Rock. There's got to be another alternative plan where we can get on those side roads and at least, because what happens is the people that are impatient behind me, they will either go to the left of you or the right of you, but they don't want to get in the one lane that's getting us all down the road. So I think you need to have some look at the other part of the problem, which is we don't have a solution when we do have the accidents. You can put all the roads up you want.
You don't have, there's not many alternatives at all, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so, you know, whether, do we have a helicopter place where somebody can actually come through? No. You know, there's some other issues here in the safety of just getting the people so that, yeah, you want the ones there that maybe saw the accident, but the folks back there, what's their main goal? They want to get out of Dodge. So you got to figure out some other ways other than the exits to get us off. Even if I've been to other countries and they even have great big screens, but not only do they have the traffic plan where the accidents are, but they'll tell you which way, other ways to go. I know that Colorado's not in that sophistication, but the little telling me it's going to take me 8 minutes to get to Monument, I really don't care. I really would like to know, is there an alternative route to get me off of here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so what is now, you're having these listening sessions and stuff, so what's the time frame to make the decision on if they're having the express lane or not? Because if you're going to start building in the fall, you have to know a certain point before then what you're going to be doing. So what's kind of the timing on that?
I can talk about the environmental assessment part, and then John can talk about the design part, because we're doing both at the same time, which we're allowed to do under federal required regulations. So we are in the, this is what it's officially called, the environmental assessment phase of this project, in which we are, we have to first look at we're assessing the environmental impacts of a no-build. We have to look at a no-build. And then we have to look at what are the environmental impacts of widening the road. the wider shoulders, the wildlife crossings, the extra one, all the things that we're doing at this part of the project. So we've got to look at those impacts. And then what do we do with that additional lane? We'll evaluate the impacts of making it a general purpose lane or an express lane. And so we're documenting this. We have to do this for the Federal Highway Administration. They have to sign off on this before we can begin construction. And so we will have the environmental assessment done. It's scheduled to be done for your review in the April timeframe. And when that's completed, we will blast that information out so you're aware of it, so you can review it. And we'll have formal public meetings during that time where these are informal, but where we have a podium, people get up, they speak for 3 or 4 minutes and that kind of thing. So we are planning to have those in April. We're also planning to have telephone town halls in a couple of weeks for people who may not have the time to physically come to these meetings so that they can call in from their cell phones. So we're trying to reach as many people as we can, just to let them know what is going on. They can voice their concerns, ask their questions, and then you can talk about the design aspect of it, like how we get ready, how can we be ready by the end of this year?
Well, the main thing is, we're trying to lean forward as much as we can on design. And we're hoping to be able to get, even early action type packages, projects going as quickly as we can. If the funding comes in, if the environmental assessment or however it concludes, the design we have is flexible. We need that extra pavement width, we know that. So we can implement the design hopefully as long as the funding comes in, no matter what the final selection is.
But be truthful, right now you're designing for tolls. All your slides show tolls. That's pretty much your design right now, correct? And it can be modified, but correct?
In the sense that
Yes or no?
you can understand that we're always going to do kind of a little wider solution because it's easier to just bear back.
Well,
so yes, in that sense, yes.
And it's 3 lanes, not 4, like everybody's been asking for. Because you keep saying lane, not lanes.
That's maybe an
So
expression lane.
all of us that
Right,
keep bringing it up,
An additional
But that's
12.
the-
just talking to the
Now,
walls.
that's a lot more challenging effort and would
So
give us
then,
a lot more.
my follow-on question real quick, just so everybody knows that we're not talking to ourselves here. How is this all being captured and is being taken back to headquarters?
I'm recording it.
You are?
It's being recorded.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Barry. My wife and I have been here 18 years. But if I heard you correctly just now, the decision's already made that we're only going to have 3 lanes, regardless of each direction, because you're only doing the environmental impact for an additional lane. Is that correct?
We are just.
So we're wasting our time looking for a 4th lane. Sure.
That's what we're looking at.
There would need to be some, right now, even the funding that's there is not, is theoretical at the moment.
But they're saying we have
We're
plenty
planning
of
on
funds.
that.
Never mind.
We have to work a little bit right now.
I think what you're hearing here is pretty much a consensus that you don't have necessarily the right alternative. And I think what we're trying to push back on you is don't ground yourself on that single alternative at this point. Carry multiple alternatives forward, both through the environmental phase as well as technical phase.
We are moving through the PDL.
You just got through saying.
No, but there's a difference between the two. The PEL phase is conceptual, so that we're ready to do improvements to the 2 miles once funding becomes available. We do have the funding to do something now, and generally that's how it works with other DOTs across the country, is making incremental improvements.
Right, but what we don't want, I would think, is to be confronted 2 months from now with a single alternative that we can all show up and attend hearings on, but it's the only alternative in front of us. We don't want that to happen. We want multiple alternatives to be carried forward from here. And then when we get to the next phase, we talk about all of those alternatives, not just the one. Because right now, there's a lot of unhappy people.
There's no doubt,
including me.
4-lane alternative is not being considered, that's what you mean by the.
And what I'm saying is, I think it ought to be, and I think a lot of people here.
Yeah. We'll be back here in 10
I have one
years.
more question, then I'll be quiet. You're talking about this is all being recorded. Where is this published?
These are informal meetings. We're not required by law to have these. We will have a formal one with the EA. We're going to have, court reporters, that whole kind of thing, getting all the comments down. What we do is we capture, we have someone taking notes, I record it, we capture it, and we put it as part of the record so that we can capture what the public thinks. But it's not required for us to do this, or required for us to even record this. But we do this so we can get a sense of what the concerns are, mainly what the questions are, so we make sure we get the right information out, and it helps us a lot in that regard. Yes, sir?
I have a question for you. In all your studies, you've done a lot of studies on safety and traffic flow and that side of it. Has there been any research into the economic impact of adding tolls versus a free lane?
Well, the environmental assessment does include, some level. I don't know, exactly what level you mean as far as if it's, looking into profit margins of local businesses and stuff like that. I don't believe that we have mechanisms doing that. It's an environmental assessment is generally, what are our impacts to the environment, to wildlife. There definitely, is an aspect of it that looks into, our impact on certain communities or whatever, and those will be looked at, certain economic communities. But as far as, a grandiose, what does it do to the chamber or businesses in this area or that, we don't, not to my knowledge, we're refined to that level.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My question goes back to the beginning. This thing all started with us voting to give up our tax dollars to help fund this. Why were we not told in the very beginning that we were going to have a toll road or an express lane if we voted for that? And why did it come out after the fact? That's what I think most of us are upset about. That we were misled when we were given the information in the beginning. Everyone was raw, the Gazette and all those guys, have special interests. I don't mean that too loud.
Yeah, it was withheld, the information.
Yeah, the information was not shown. I would have voted against it. I'm serious.
Me too.
So why are we misled from the very beginning that we had to have a tolling because to get this extra money, or whatever it's called, that's what we had to have? Where was the miscommunication between the government officials and your group? How did this all come about? That's what we're upset about.
We've been following as a PEO process. There's a process that we follow. We've been doing it since January. So, and as when the ballot measure came out, we were still in the middle of that PEO and the environmental assessment process. So
It was misleading from the get-go. And I'm upset about that because I no longer trust my government in any shape, form, or any level. And I don't live in Montana. I'm not one of those.
Yes, sir.
My name's Eric Lesson, and my only reason for coming to this meeting was to deal with not having a toll road. I just disagree with it. Every person I talk to disagrees with it. CDOT has done no good example that they can convince us that a toll road is the right way to go. I think there's a terrible communication from CDOT. You have not convinced me at all that that's a better solution. And so I think if you could do that, you would get support from this group. But you have come nowhere near doing that.
The fourth lane could be what they want.
Well, I don't believe there's a fourth lane going to happen realistically. So I'm only concerned with one issue, this express lane. I don't want to have it, and everyone I talk to doesn't want to have it. And yet you insist that that's the only way to go, but you have not made a compelling argument for an express lane.
So the colorful chart showing that the choice, reliable choice.
No, your chart said no both are going to run together at the same time. Your chart showed, it completely deleted your argument. And I think the gentleman back here asked you,
9 years.
where 9 years, they're both essentially going to run out at the same time. You kind of said, okay, it doesn't make sense to do either, other than we'll bring in some additional revenue.
But the managed lane will be.
You got two stop lanes and one that if you can pay for it.
That chart right there, I think.
Thanks a lot.
It's really discrimination, because there's only the people that can afford to use that lane.
It's 8:15 and we are gonna have to clear out here. We'll take just one or two more, maybe someone who hasn't had a chance to ask a question. And we'll take you and one more and that's it, and we're gonna have to get out of here. Yes, ma'am.
What I'm hearing is that we either get the 3 lanes and the express lane or nothing from CDOT.
It's 3 lanes.
You're certainly trying to hear from us that our, evaluation, how we evaluate the importance of trip reliability and having those options, and the success we've seen with it on pretty much all the other approaches to Denver. We're certainly trying to be open with you, but we are, there is still, there's not a 4th lane being considered, but there are the 2 options for the 3rd lane being considered still coming out of this.
How wide are those shoulders on the outboard side? They're going like
12-foot shoulders.
People will be using them as escape.
Absolutely, it could be more
All
death,
the time.
more accidents.
accidents.
You're crazy.
Okay, we need to, if you have, we really do have to leave here at 8:15. Because I
Tell her just